is me, age 17, in the early days of black and white photography. I was applying to university, and the professor I was in touch with asked for some essays. They came back with red ink on them, which said, "Ramble more and aim for paradox." And ever since, I've been a paradox hunter, looking for contradictions. And in the space of the next minutes, without rambling, I hope to cover some of those contradictions. There's also the scent of pain. This is Tahrir Square in Cairo, and when I went there, I got to know a taxi driver very well. And he told me that half of his income went on private tuition for his kids. I said, "How can that be?" He said, "That's the only way I can get my kids to pass these government exams, which is all about memorization." And I met the Egyptian Minister of Education, and I challenged him and said, "Surely you can do something." He said, "I tried for years to change this standardized testing, and it was more than I can do." Hypothesis number one, it takes more than one person's nudge to change things in education. So when I came to education from the business world, I was struck by the IT paradox. I mean, there's technology all around us, but it seems to take a decade or so to trickle down to the classroom. I mean, we know that there's amazing techniques now for teachers. There's animations and simulations to teach difficult subjects. But they're not so much used in the class. How can we accelerate it? I believe the way is to encourage the teachers to take the credit and become the world champions for the success of the students. And a teacher without IT, how can they possibly know with 300 kids they're responsible for how they're doing in every subject? But with IT, they can tell the parents exactly how they're doing in each subject, and they can focus their effort to help the over-challenged and the unchallenged ones. Tony Wagner, great TED talker and Harvard professor, reminds us that the world no longer cares how well you do in Trivial Pursuit, because knowledge is a commodity. It's not about what you know, it's what you can do with what you know. So everyone's on the lookout to try and get better at 21st century skills. How to run a meeting, how to lead, how to write a CV, how to interview. And why is that important? Because graduate unemployment in many countries of the world, including the US, is as high as 50%. So that's why it's great that some GEM schools here in Dubai, they offer BTEC vocational qualifications. I have a friend who's a BTEC teacher. She tells a great story. The first time she goes into a classroom, the students, they expect a textbook and they want to sit back and passively take notes. She says, no, it's not like that. I'm a facilitator. I'm going to help you do your research so you can answer the questions yourself next time. But the funny thing is that in the UK, vocational doesn't have the kudos of academic qualifications. That's a little bit different in Germany. And why is that good? It's because when your boiler breaks down, it's a high-tech piece of kit. And the engineer that comes out to fix it, armed with their vocational qualifications, they know a heck of a lot about computers and about mechanics. I did an MBA, and there's a problem in the MBA world as well. London Business School did a study of employers around the world, and they said, well, they're just not worth the money. One bank said, we'd rather hire a PhD in Russian literature than hire an MBA. And at least if they've studied Dostoevsky here, they have a curious mind and a learning attitude, and we can give them the job-specific skills when they've joined. So LBS, armed with this information, tried to change the way they taught the MBA. But there was pushback by the teachers who wanted to teach what they'd learned. And they didn't want to collaborate with other professors in different subjects. The same was true of Harvard Business School. And the employers that they talked to said, we want action people. And I have met some MBA schools in Dubai. They are changing the way they teach the MBA to be much more about problem solving and to use professors who have a real-world industry experience so that the graduates come out much more rounded. And the proof of the pudding is that in some of these MBA schools, 100% of the graduates have a job within 3 months of graduating. Now, the paradox is that many education systems in the world are pretty close to the Prussian education system which started in 1808, after the Prussians with their professional army were humiliated by the amateur army of Napoleon. So they set about changing many things in society, including the education system. They wanted the young people in the schools not to think. They wanted them to obey orders. And that was very popular in the Industrial Revolution at the time, because the factories needed workers to perform monotonous tasks. Now, this is Eton College. Famous alumni include David Cameron, Prime Minister of the UK, Princes William and Harry. Also fictional characters like James Bond and Captain Hook, but also Sir John Gurdon, the new British Nobel Prize winner for science. Now, he revealed his school report for science, and the teacher said he was a lousy student, and it was an absolute ridiculous waste of time for him to think about becoming a scientist. Fortunately, he did, and the research from King's College London is that it's the teacher that has the biggest impact on our choice of career. And the other research they did was that if you look at 10-year-olds, their favorite subject at that time is maths and science. But then by the time they get to 13, they've lost interest, and it's their least favorite subject. Something's happened in those 3 years. And the answer very probably is the standardized testing. The teachers have to teach for the test, and it's just so repetitive. But we know that kids are so curious about science that when there's a science museum or there's a science festival, they get very, very excited and count the days until the arrival. We've just had the Olympics, and these two brothers, the Brownlee brothers, won medals for the triathlon event. And after the Olympics, the British coaches, there were 19 individual gold medals, were thinking 8 and 12 years ahead, what will be the gold medal winning times? And what do we have to do with the 12-year-olds of today and the small steps we have to take with them, with their teachers, with their coaches, to get them on the podium in those many years to come? Staying on the world of sport, this is Fred Perry. He was the last Briton to win a Grand Slam tennis tournament 76 years ago. That was when tennis was an amateur sport, and he was pretty much alone, apart from his mother, who ironed his long trousers. Fast forward to today, Andy Murray, his mother's still behind him as his ex-coach, but also 5 other professionals who coach him on his technique and his condition. But that's not including a psychologist who works on his mental attitude. Because to win in sport, you need a huge amount of self-belief and mental toughness. And I really believe there's a lot to be taken from the world of sport, and the same principles of mental toughness are needed in the workplace. So back to the classroom. There's, over the world, the textbook is still pretty much king. And there's lots of educational software out there, but a lot of it is educational snake oil, by which I mean it promises far more than it delivers. But there's one case study I like. It's a video game site for mathematics. And a good way that I've seen it used in class is the teacher will say, okay, we're learning about Pythagoras for the first time today. Let's play a game. 5 minutes, he stops and says, okay, how did you do? What was difficult? What was hard? What kind of mathematics do I need to teach you so you can crack the game? Play again. 5 minutes later, some of the kids have got the game. They stand up and go and sit next to the ones who are having problems. And suddenly they're teaching each other collaboration is a beautiful thing. And a very important thing about this particular software is that It's written by mathematics professionals who are very cognizant of the principles of maths, because it's not just a skill and drill. There's no point in the kids calculating the area of a rectangle 200 times if, when faced with a real business problem, they can't figure out how many tiles you need for a roof. I used to work at GE back in the 90s, and that was the biggest company in the world at the time, 250,000 employees, 9 divisions in very different industries. But we collaborated a lot. It was a very expensive process to fly people around the world under the leadership of Jack Welch so that we could take best practice and reapply it in our own division. And the wonderful thing about TED and many platforms that we have in 2012 is that it's a lot cheaper to be able to do that, searching out and reapplying best practice. And I'm very pleased and proud to be in the world of education now and a very small cog in the system to work alongside you to make it happen. Thank you.